Substance use disorders contribute to considerable morbidity and mortality as well as societal costs. Substance abuse and addiction is a problem that affects people of all age ranges across the world. However, there are ways that risk of addiction can be reduced and those that are struggling can be supported in recovering. As a college student, I know a lot of people who struggle with substance abuse and addiction, both in my current life and in my past in high school, as well as experiencing it within my own family. My goal with this presentation is to highlight the problem that is substance abuse and outline the causes and solutions to this issue across all age ranges in America. I'm going to begin by discussing a few different categories of substance abuse and their commonality in each age group. Substance abuse is very common. As of 2020, more than half of Americans older than 12 years old have experience with using substances or have an addiction. How many of you have known someone who has struggled or have struggled yourself with substance abuse? How many of you know people that are in recovery for an addiction? Addiction and casual use of substances has become very normalized in society today. Alcohol is one of the most commonly abused substances in America. Despite the legal drinking age being 21 in the United States, almost 500,000 Americans ages 12 to 17 are reported to struggle with alcoholism. For young adults ages 18 to 25, this number is even higher. 35% of this range is reported to participate in binge drinking or have alcohol-related medical problems at their young age. And at least 14 million adults aged 26 and over struggle with alcohol abuse as of 2017. Prescription drugs and painkiller abuse is very common in the US as well. These substances are extremely addictive, and even people who were originally prescribed the medications legally can become dependent after prolonged use. Many teenagers ages 12 to 17 are able to access prescription medication through friends or other people who have been prescribed them. More than 50% of 12 to 17-year-olds who abuse prescription drugs say that they do it because it's easy to get from their parents' medicine cabinets. Prescription drug misuse is most high among young adults aged 18 to 25, according to the National Institute on Drug Abuse. More than 50% of American adults take at least one prescription medication. And since it's so easy to become addicted to prescriptions, this can lead to abuse after sustained use, depending on the drug. And finally, illegal drug use is another category of addiction that affects millions of people. Some of the substances that fall into this category include cocaine, hallucinogens, and anything that is not regulated by the government. So 6% of 12 to 17-year-olds abuse illegal drugs, and about 12% of 18 to 25-year-olds abuse illegal drugs, and an even higher number, about 25 to 30% of adults over 25 are reported to use illegal substances as well. So I've just provided a few of the many different types of substance abuse that can affect all age groups in this country, and now I'm going to be talking about some of the possible causes for these addictions. There are many causes for addiction depending on people's circumstances. How many of you remember learning about substance and drug addiction in school? How many of you felt significantly impacted by that education? And how many of you felt like it really wasn't emphasized enough, or not long enough, or only too early in school? There are many causes for substance abuse, and for some people it can be a combination of many of these reasons. Firstly, mental health and physical health issues can easily lead to drug and alcohol abuse. After prolonged periods of mental or physical pain, people often turn to substances to find some form of relief. Many teenagers who are struggling at home or have physical and mental health problems turn to abusing substances as a way to try to minimize the effects. There are many ways that young people can access drugs and alcohol, even at very young ages. Most young adults with mental or physical health problems that abuse drugs use prescription drugs and painkillers. And almost 10 million American adults are reported to have a substance abuse issue and at least one mental illness. This shows a strong link between mental health and reliance on substances. Secondly, a lack of proper education and the social stigma surrounding addiction can make it really difficult for people to get the help that they need during the early stages of drug abuse. Many young people are only briefly educated on the substance abuse, and once they're addicted, they may face repercussions for seeking any type of outside help from parents or people at their school. Young adults often don't recognize patterns of substance abuse in their lives because substance use is very common in ages 18 to 25, especially alcohol abuse, especially during college. Since this use is so normalized, there's a stigma around speaking out about being addicted or questioning the excessive use of substances. Many adults face a social pressure to beat their addictions on their own and not admit to being stuck in a pattern of abuse. It is considered taboo for people to speak out about addictions, and it can lead to social backlash in the workplace or in personal relationships, which makes it hard for adults to seek help. And lastly, in America, there is easy accessibility to substances in many places throughout the country, especially alcohol and drugs that are legal in certain states like marijuana. So teenagers can easily access alcohol and drugs using fake IDs, older friends or family members, or even illegal drug dealers that they can get in contact with. For young adults, it's even easier to access substances in this way. Marijuana dispensaries and alcohol are legal in most states, and for this age group, they can easily access them, and it makes it extremely easy to get addicted. And finally, adults can also freely access alcohol and marijuana and other prescription drugs that they're often prescribed, which can lead to abuse of these drugs or escalate to using illegal drugs. These are just some of the more common causes for substance abuse out of the many that I didn't mention, such as a person's home life and family history of addiction. Now that we've covered what causes this problem, I'm going to discuss the possible solutions. So there are some proposed solutions to support people with addictions and prevent ongoing abuse or people getting addicted going forward. How many of you know what resources are out there for people struggling with addiction off the top of your head? And how many of you can name the closest rehab center, the closest Alcoholics Anonymous, the closest substance abuse counselor? It's very uncommon. Resources for addicts are very limited, and it's uncommon that people would be educated on where to find them. And even if they're offered, they are very unadvertised and unaffordable. So my first solution that I thought of was to build more rehab facilities and make them more affordable and accessible in areas not just big cities. Only around 1 million of the 12 to 17-year-olds who abuse substances have actually gotten to receive any type of treatment. And many young adults over 18 don't receive treatment, and usually because they're college aged or above, they don't recognize their use as abuse, and they don't know who to turn to get treatment for that. And roughly 52% of adults don't receive any treatment for their substance addictions because they either can't afford it or don't know where to turn for said treatment. If there are more accessible treatment options and more education surrounding how to access those resources, the substance abuse problem could be significantly reduced. Another important step in preventing and ending addiction is to reduce the stigma around talking about substance abuse. This can be achieved by educating people about addiction beyond the basics that are briefly touched upon in schools. It's also important that the curriculum about substance abuse doesn't just tell people to not get into substances in the first place, but also reminds people to have empathy towards those who are already addicted. Teenagers struggling with addiction being given better education about the options for treating substance abuse will be better equipped to get out of their cycles of addiction if need be. And since a lot of education about substance abuse happens during younger grades in school, it would be beneficial for young adults to continue hearing about addiction and treatment for substance abuse into college and beyond. Just like for young adults, adults over 25 could benefit from more education and a more understanding attitude surrounding the issue of substance abuse. The more people are taught about substance abuse and the treatment options, the more the stigma around talking about it will be reduced, and the more adults will be able to seek treatment and support that they need. Another essential change that needs to be made is for every state to have easier and more affordable access to substance abuse counseling and Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous services. These services can be essential in helping addicts recover and maintain their sobriety long term. Many young people don't have the right insurance to cover the cost of counseling for substance abuse, or they don't have access to AA or NA services in their area. This problem persists through the 18 to 25-year-old demographic, depending on their insurance coverage, financial status, or their physical location. Like I said, in cities, it's easier to get these types of treatment. And statistically, adults often do have better access to resources because they're more financially stable, but again, that's not the case for everybody. And one of the main problems for adults seeking treatment is their location and not having services available around them. So I've just covered some of the essential steps that can be taken to reduce the impact of addiction on the American people. Not all addictions are preventable, but with help and support, they can become more manageable and people can recover from them. Addiction and substance abuse is a very serious issue that not only affects millions of people, but also their loved ones and the people around them. There are ways to prevent addiction through better education, and recovery is possible for those in active addiction if they are given access to the necessary resources. Overall, if the solutions that I spoke about today were implemented and with some support from those around them, people struggling with substance abuse can get the help they need and they can break free from the cycle of addiction. Thank you.